and Environment Committee on Environment Canterbury, Temporary Commissioners and Improved Water Management Amendment Bill.
The bills are set down for second reading. No bills have been introduced, so the House now comes to questions for oral answer. And the first question stands in the name of the Leader of the Opposition, David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by his statement, quote, "I am deeply concerned about every child in New Zealand who is in poverty," end quote? And if so, why have the number of children living in material hardship grown under his watch?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, yes, I stand by that statement, and the recent report by Brian Perry says that the rise in non-income material hardship from 2006-07 to 2010-11, which the member is referring to, is, quote, "is not unexpected given the impact of the global financial crisis and the economic downturn." Interesting enough, though, the same report also shows that in 2007, after Working for Families had been introduced and following a $7 billion surplus, there were between 170,000 and 240,000 children living in poverty, depending on the exact measure used. So that's the point, isn't it? Labor had $7 billion and still had kids living in poverty.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he stand by his statement that if the government does not take action to provide food in schools, quote, "we are effectively punishing children for the sins of their parents"? And if not, what has changed since he has made those statements, other than the number of children living in hardship has increased?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, yes, I stand by that statement. The government's expanded fruit in schools. The government's given money to Kids Can to fund more schools. The government has worked with other commercial entities like Fonterra to run programs in schools. And I go back to this question. In 2007, as an example, was there any child going to school in New Zealand hungry? Absolutely. And there was a $7 billion surplus and they didn't care about it.
The Leader of the Opposition.
In light of that last answer, will he back the proposal made by Kids Can today, where a $1.9 million investment by the government would be matched by the private sector to provide 16,000 children in decile 1 to 4 schools with food? And if not, why not?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're not ruling out doing a bit more work with Julie at Kids Can, and we'll go away and have a look and see whether there's some more we can do. But let me raise another question. In 2006, was there any child that went to school?
Order. It's actually Minister's job to answer questions, not to ask questions. Order.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. Will he support a policy to ensure private rental properties for low-income tenants are upgraded as recommended by the Children's Commissioner, particularly as private landlords have been slow to take up the government's Warm Up program?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I think the Minister of Social Development has already said that she'll look pretty closely at potentially the warrant of fitness idea for people or landlords that receive the accommodation supplement. Again, they might want to have a look at it. But Mr. Speaker, this is a government that by 2013, from 2009, has insulated 190,000 homes at the cost of $347 million. This is a government that in 4 years...
Point of order, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This question was about private rentals, not about what the government's done. In the state housing...
Order. Now one's getting as bad as the other. Point of order. The member was... Order. The member was perfectly at liberty to raise his point of order, not to enter into the debate that way, though. But I think, given the tit-for-tat, we'd better move on to the next supplementary question. The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the government adopt a measure of poverty? And if not, why not?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no, not a single measure of poverty. I think there are a number of ways of measuring poverty. But I think I'll use this measure as one measure. That was in 2007, after housing costs, there were 200 140,000 children in New Zealand living in poverty, and that government had had
Order.
20...
Order.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he think that the $9 billion a year he spent on tax cuts, 2/3 of which went to the top 20% of income earners and gives the bottom 20% nothing, have been beneficial to children in poverty? And
The
if not,
Right
why
Honourable
not?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member has to stop consulting the Labor finance spokesman to get his numbers, because they're always wrong. As we've been through before, the tax cuts were not only distributionally neutral, as has never been debunked by Labor, but interestingly enough, because we're in the silly season, so if they want to reverse National's tax program in 2014, go ahead, because this year alone the government got billions of dollars extra from those tax cuts.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Leader of the
Mr.
Opposition.
Speaker, I seek leave to table a document by Brian Easton that records that the
Order. This is a point of order.
that backs up the figures that I just used about National's tax cuts benefiting the top 20% and not the bottom.
Order the articles by Brian Easton, but what was it published in?
It was on his website, sir.
I think that's readily available to all members.
Well, it's not a well-known website,
Order.
Mr. Speaker, although it might be well-known now.
Order. I think we'd better settle down.
The House has had its fairly robust time. Te Raro Flavel, supplementary question. Te Raro
Tēnā koe,
Flavel.
Mr. Speaker, kia ora tātou katoa. To the Prime Minister, does he agree with his statement on the 3rd of July 2012 that, quote, if you don't measure, monitor and report on things, I don't think you can make progress, end of quote. And if so, does he agree that setting indicators and targets for the reduction of poverty is critical if we are to achieve the difference we want in the lives of some 270,000 New Zealand children?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I absolutely agree that you need to measure, monitor and report on things, and therefore I've measured that this year the government will spend $2.1 billion on family tax credits, 40% of which goes to beneficiaries. We've measured that this government will give around $2 billion on subsidising housing through income-related rents and accommodation supplements. This year this government will spend $1.4 billion on early childhood education. This year this government will spend almost $5 billion on benefits, including $1.8 billion on the DPB. This government will put $24 million into rheumatic fever. This government will increase the number of children going to early childhood education. And this government, suffering the worst global financial crisis we've seen, has maintained all benefits entitlements. Not bad.
Te Raro Flavel. Order Te Raro Flavel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister pleased that in the relationship accord signed with the Māori Party 1 year ago today, it was agreed that a ministerial committee on poverty would be established to bring a greater focus to and improve coordination of government...
Order. I want to be able to hear this question. Te Raro Flavel.
Shall I start again, Mr.
The
Chair?
member may start again.
Thank you very much. To the Prime Minister, is the Prime Minister pleased that in the relationship accord signed with the Māori Party 1 year ago today, it was agreed that a ministerial committee on poverty would be established to bring a greater focus to and improve coordination of government activity aimed at alleviating the effects of poverty? And will he ask that the committee now demonstrate the leadership required to adopt a strategic framework for addressing child poverty?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes, I'm pleased it's been formed. I've also myself been to that committee meeting and seen Russell Wills actually presenting to the committee his recommendations that were presented in the child report today. The government will look at adopting some of those reports, but I go back to the point I've made earlier. These have been difficult economic times and the government has put more money in these areas. The people I think that should be ashamed in this country are the people that had a $20 billion surplus over 3 years and cared so little they...
Order. Prime Minister's got no responsibility for that.
Question number 2, Todd McLeay. Now, order. Now, I'd like the House to be just a little more reasonable with the interjections.